Hey guys, GothamGeekGirl here, and it's time for another review. Let's talk about the upcoming Gothic drama Wuthering Heights. The 2026 period romantic drama film is written and directed by Saltburn director Emerald Fennell, and it's loosely inspired by Emily Bronte's highly controversial 1847 novel Wuthering Heights. I found the film to be quite controversial for a number of reasons, most importantly with its use of marketing itself as a romance and its handling or lack thereof conveying concepts and themes that were pretty important to the novel. The reinterpretation of the classic novel felt like a diluted fan fiction, stripping away the context of generational trauma, race, and socioeconomics. The film synopsis reads, Tragedy strikes when Heathcliff falls in love with Catherine Earnshaw, a woman from a wealthy family in 18th century England. The film stars Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi as Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff, respectively, alongside Chau, Shazad Latif, Alison Oliver, Martin Clunes, and Ewan Mitchell in supporting roles. It's a very small film with a very limited cast and limited set pieces. The original was written in 1847 by English writer Emily Bronte, and it's a gothic tale of intense passion, obsession, and revenge set on the Yorkshire moors. The novel was highly controversial upon its 1847 publication. It was shocking Victorian readers with its intense violence, morbid themes, and amoral characters. Critics deemed it coarse, hateful, and a compound of vulgar depravity, challenging strict 19th century social and religious norms. Now, the novel already was criticized for its intense, obsessive love rather than the expected romance, and it covered themes of love as possession, revenge, codependence, and betrayal. So basically, love is possession. Catherine and Heathcliff's love is intense, it's toxic, and it's viewed as consuming rather than gentle. Revenge. Heathcliff's actions are driven by the desire for retribution for his abuse and loss. Mr. Earnshaw brings the orphan Heathcliff, which is Jacob Elordi, to live at Wuthering Heights, while Catherine becomes inseparable from him. She originally treats him as her pet, and they grow a very close bond, as her father beats him brutally. Although she's deeply in love with Heathcliff, Catherine marries the refined Edgar Linton, stating that marrying Heathcliff would degrade her. Now, it's not the act of adapting the book in itself that's controversial, it's the way it was handled is very misleading. Now, the film's title is stylized with quotation marks, and Fennell herself has stated that any adaptation of a novel should be enclosed in quotation marks. The thing for me is that you can't adapt a book as dense and complicated and difficult as this book. I can't say I'm making Wuthering Heights. It's not possible. What I can say is I'm making a version of it. I like that at least she said that, but it still doesn't feel fair to call it that and to make it the greatest love story ever told is sickening. That does not sit well with me. Fennell's film adaptation of Wuthering Heights, it's not a romance in any way, shape, or form, and marketing it as such is kind of deranged and disturbing. While it is very spicy and it completely glides over the fact that it's basically trauma porn and toxic age regression. I'm going to get into adult child syndrome and what that is. But it also neglects to reflect other important themes such as socioeconomics, the inherent themes of classism and racism. It mostly focused on the toxic romance rather than highlighting the literary commentary on class and race, as another controversy was Elordi's character, Heathcliff, is described as a dark-skinned gypsy in the novel. And that was the reason they could not marry. He was called a Moor when he was abandoned and adopted in Liverpool, and this clearly plays into his abuse, being treated like a pet, and his further tragedies. This erases his experiences and the harsh realities faced, even though it's taking some time, place some time after slavery's abolition, about 100 years later. Liverpool was once the largest slave port in Britain. However, let me say I did enjoy the performances. Margot Robbie shines as Catherine. She plays Cathy Earnshaw, the beautiful, vindictive, childish, passionate, very narcissistic, headstrong character. Now, Cathy is defined by her untamed nature and pride. She's torn between her love for Heathcliff and her desire for gaining more social status. Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff, he's an abused outcast, he's arrogant, he's brooding and vindictive, and his love for Cathy is visceral. Now, the duo are great. They have great chemistry. It's seductive, it's spicy, it's steamy, it's intense. They did a great job of also portraying the weird childlike nature of clearly from stemming from their abuse and playfully teasing each other that shared from their shared abuse of children.
Take a wife.
A wife? What wife?
Now, the children versions are played by Charlotte Millington, who stars as young Catherine Earnshaw, and Owen Cooper plays young Heathcliff. And He has international recognition for his debut role playing the teenage murder suspect Jamie Miller in the Netflix miniseries Adolescence, which was amazing. And for that role, he won a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Limited Series, Anthology Series, or Movie. And this made him the youngest male actor to win a Primetime Emmy Award. He also won a Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actor, a miniseries for television for the same role. So it was great to see him play this role because we already know he can kind of play that like arrogant kid. And Martin Clune plays as Mr. Earnshaw. He's the father who took in Heathcliff. He's abusive, he's alcoholic, he's a gambler, and he beats him. He's stern, he's stubborn, he's neglectful, and violent. So, yes, the film did show some semblance of their abuse and the ramifications, but romanticizing it is where the film loses its footing. Let's get into why this was problematic. Calling it a romance is weird because it failed to highlight the trauma and the horrific tragedy elements from the novel. Now, age regression is a psychological phenomenon where an individual temporarily reverts to a younger state of mind. So they adopt behaviors, emotions, and thought patterns from an earlier development stage. So this is essentially a coping mechanism for stress or trauma, ranging from childlike play to total childlike dependence. Adult child syndrome, ACS, refers to the lasting emotional behavior and psychological effects in adults raised in a dysfunctional, neglectful, or abusive household. So these individuals often struggle with intimacy, trust, self-esteem. They act from a place of fear or childhood trauma. Common symptoms include people pleasing, perfectionism, fear of abandonment, and difficulty setting boundaries. So, treatment could involve therapy and trauma informed care to break these cycles. Clearly, back then, they didn't have any of this. As I mentioned, the reinterpretation of the novel felt like a diluted fan fiction. Apparently, the book is far more sinister and really depicts a much more monstrous Heathcliff, which was kind of needed. In the book, he does things to Catherine's body. He also abuses her children. None of this is captured in the film. She didn't even have the baby. So, in the novel, Heathcliff is portrayed as a deeply sadistic and vengeful figure. He subjects Catherine's daughter, as I mentioned, she doesn't have the baby in the film, Kathy to severe psychological and physical abuse, and his revenge extends to tormenting Hurton Earnshaw and his own son Linton, another thing not shown in the film. So, in the book, he systematically destroys the lives of the next generation, and he manipulates and mistreats his own children due to weakness and resemblance to his mother. He also abuses the young Catherine, forcing her into a miserable marriage. So, all these things, while the book essentially focuses on his obsession with Catherine, her memory expresses a longing for her ghost and famously commands that his coffin be placed next to hers, which is a weird romantic gesture in this weird, sick way, a morbid desire to possess her even after death. So essentially, these themes from the book should have been in the movie because the movie not only romanticized the violence, but it neglected to even mention the generational trauma, which was a major theme of the novel. Now, the performances by Robbie and Elordi were great, like as I mentioned. And the real stealer for me, though, was Alison Oliver as Isabella Linton. I think the film did a weird job of introducing her. At first, we thought she was a prospect, but then we later find out that that's Edgar's sister. But she was amazing. Isabella seems innocent, naive, and romantic. She's pampered, but she's also victimized by Heathcliff as a tool for revenge against Kathy for marrying Edgar. Her switch up was excellent. That whole weird BDSM thing was insane. We didn't expect any of that. Now, every character was manipulative and wretched, though. So, for people to question who was wrong or right to defend the relationship shows poor execution because Kathy might have been the most vile. She was doing some really sick, twisted stuff behind the scenes. The film should have kept more context from the novel instead of trying to justify the trauma. Now, Chau plays Nellie Dean, Vi Nu Yang plays the young Nellie Dean. I thought Hong was a weird casting because she looks so much older than Elordi and Robbie, but as kids, she looked close in age. But in regards to her character, she was also vindictive, but it stemmed from her mistreatment not being a part of the family. So I don't think it's really fair to place blame on her for the outcomes in the film. Everyone kind of played a part in the misdirection of the relationship for Kathy and Heath. Shazad Latif was Edgar Linton. I think he might have been the least vindictive. He really did love his wife. And Catherine Earnshaw's psychological distress in Wuthering Heights. It's not diagnosed as a specific modern mental illness, but it presents severe trauma responses, like I said, including complex PTSD, borderline personality disorder, like traits like intense mood swings, self-harm, identity disturbance, and symptoms resembling like anorexia, brain fever stemming from childhood abuse, and later conflicts between her wild nature, societal expectations, leading to self-destruction and eventual delirium and death. Now, her behavior is deeply rooted in childhood trauma and abandonment by also Heathcliff, leading to deep physiological ruins. She also has brain fever, delirium, characterized by hallucinations. It's a physical manifestation of her mental turmoil. And this all ties into the way the film, like as I mentioned, doesn't really handle the trauma as well. But there's some positives. The film displays visually gorgeous set pieces and costumes. I found the whimsical approach to the set pieces awesome. The way they had like the bottles become a part of the wall. The skin was a little weird, but the set designs were pretty awesome. The costumes felt out of place, but they were beautiful, bright, and vibrant. Now, the costumes were designed by Jacqueline Duran, and they're highly stylized and intentionally inaccurate to the period. They kind of draw from 1950s cinema and 19th century romanticism. So the aesthetic features like a blend of sheer modern fabrics. There's a lot of red for Kathy, and Jacob Elordi has a more brooding, Georgian-inspired and restrained look. But the looks didn't really match the set. Other issues with the adaptation, aside from the controversy casting Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff, sparking debate over racial misinterpretation, are criticisms modern soundtrack and 80s style costumes. Its focus on eroticism over death. Anthony Willis composed the score, and it had he also worked with Fennell on Saltburn, and it had Charlie XCX contributing an album of original songs. That was really weird and off-putting. Emerald Fennell, the director, she's an English actress and award-winning filmmaker and writer. She's no stranger to period drama, so I'm kind of surprised with her misdirection on take on this film because she started with acting roles in period films. She was in Anna Karenina in 2012 on The Danish Girl. She gained prominence for a starring role in a BBC drama called The Midwife. So she's really known for being in this world, as I said, as an actress and also as a writer. She was also in The Crown, which garnered her a Primetime Emmy Award nomination. And then as a writer, Fennell's known as a showrunner for season 2 of the BBC spy thriller Killing Eve. And I'm not a huge fan of Saltburn. I had some similar issues with its exploitation and its weird use of like sexual exploitation to kind of just get people talking. But I think she skips major plot points from the novel, especially the resolution. Obsessed with the deceased Catherine, Heathcliff dies and is buried next to her. The story concludes with the union of young Catherine and Catherine Earnshaw breaking the cycle of violence, which I mentioned. This film does not mention the generational trauma at all. Released February 13th. It's directed by Emerald Fennell, rated R, definitely rated R. Runtime feels a little long, but it's 2 hours and 16 minutes. But let me know your thoughts.